Hey everybody, welcome to another JBoz gaming video. I'm your host JBoz, and today we're going to talk about the settings for World of Tanks Modern Armor on the console. Hopefully this will help you understand a little bit about the controller and be able to control that tank a little bit better when you're in the fight. So without further ado, let's get started. To get to the settings, all we need to do is press the three-line button on your controller, and that will take you into a menu. That menu has a list of options. It's settings, replays, achievements and challenges, stats, clan, tanker rewards, and quit. We're going to be focusing on settings today, so let's go ahead and drive into settings and talk about that. So in settings, you have kind of three major areas to talk about: controls, options, and licenses. Licenses we're not going to touch today. You're more than welcome to explore that on your own and learn all there is to know about licensing information that World of War tanks or wargaming wants you to know about. But today we're going to focus in on controls and options. And really, for controls, we're really going to mainly focus on controller, though there is a keyboard option, as you can see below. That option is if you have attached a keyboard to your PlayStation or Xbox, you can configure that keyboard for play as you so wish. We are going to drive into that because most people use a controller when they play on console, so we'll stick to that today. If people want me to do an in-depth keyboard configuration, leave a comment, and we'll maybe do that. For now, let's go ahead and get started with controller. There are options above that we'll go through, though I'm not going to talk extensively about them because they just mainly aren't used a lot. And that is, insert the Y-axis is an on and off option. Toggle zoom on and off is an option, and inverted reverse is another option, and then toggle artillery zoom. All of these are either on or off. You can play with them at your own leisure and kind of figure out what they do. They don't really, there's no real tips around these, so I'm not going to focus in on these things. The heading sensitivity and the pitch sensitivity you can change. Again, some people do tend to change that once they've played a little bit. So again, you can figure those things out as you go. There's nothing for me to really say about those things. But the options that I really want to kind of talk about are the controller itself, and then the ability to actually pick a different controller configuration. Right now, we're going to go through the default setup because most people don't come in and actually change this setting, and they just start playing, and so they get kind of used to where the features are on the console, and so we're going to go through that setup. But I do want you to know that there are different options, and these don't add features. All they do is move where the features, which buttons trigger the features. So as we go through here, we'll talk about each of the features, and that will maybe, along with your play, tell you that maybe your controller isn't ideally set up for how you want to play, and you can come in here and kind of pick different controller options and see which one maybe works with your play style. So without further ado, let's get started on the controller. And so the first button that we're going to look at is the menu button, and that's that three-line button we use to actually get into settings. Again, fairly straightforward. Just know where that's at because it is used when you play tanks a little bit, and so just know where the menu button is. We're going to go clockwise around the controller. The first control that we come to is the fire button, and that is the right trigger button. That is used to fire your tank. Not a lot to say beyond that, so we'll keep going. The right bumper, which is right above the trigger, is the auto aim, auto lock turret, and this is a good feature to know about. I've spoken with not only newbies but even veterans that don't really know how to auto lock onto a tank, and so that right bumper in default configuration will do that for you. And what it does is it takes that reticle. If you're close to an enemy with that reticle, it snaps to that enemy. So if you're just in the general area, it snaps to the closest enemy. And what it does is it snaps your reticle onto that enemy in mid-mass. So that means that the reticle is pointing at the middle of the tank. So if the tank is facing you, your reticle is snapped on in the middle of his front. Obviously, it's harder to pin the front of tanks, so you have to kind of know where to hit them. But if he's turned to the side of you, you're focused on the mid section of his side, and of course if he's facing away from you, you'll be locked onto his rear. Well, as the tank moves, where you're locked onto the tank changes, but you're still locked onto that tank. So your reticle, your gun, and your turret will move to follow that enemy. So it's good to be able to quickly lock on and get your gun in the general location of that enemy. But if that enemy's moving, you need to use your joystick to move your reticle to where you want to place the shot, like lead him if he's moving, or potentially if you want to pick a particular area of the tank you want to shoot, you can do that. Once you've auto-locked, you can move the joystick, and that allows you to precisely land a shot. We'll talk about zoomings here in a minute when we get to the other features on the controller. But just know that you're able to auto-lock onto tanks, and that helps new players really be able to shoot tanks in the first place. And then for more advanced players, as you get used to playing, it allows you to start to place your shots into those weaker parts of a tank that you can penetrate their armor. So let's keep moving along. The next kind of section we come to is the what I'll call the colored buttons. They are X, Y, B, and A. We'll start with A. That button specifically allows you to switch ammo in the default configuration setup. And this A button kind of toggles through your ammo types. So if you have maybe 3 different ammo types, it's already defaulted on the first type. So if you hit the A button the first time, it moves to the second ammo type. If you hit it a third time, then it moves to the third. Or I'm sorry, if you hit it a second time, it moves to the third ammo type. And of course, if you hit it yet a third time, then it kind of rotates back to the first. So kind of know that this is toggling through your different ammo types. So if you want to go from the first type to the third type, you got to remember to hit that button twice, and so on. So that's the A button, and that's how we toggle through our ammo. We'll go into ammo types and when to use, when not to use in a different video, but for now, just know that that's how you select the different ammos that your tank has. And then we have X, Y, and B. These are your consumable buttons. And these consumable buttons start with the first consumable slot, that is X. So they go left kind of to right. X is consumable 1, Y is consumable 2, and B is consumable 3. And what that means is the X is the leftmost or the first slot that you've picked, the Y is the second slot, and the B is the third or most right slot. These slots I have a tip for. What I would do as a player, or what I even do as a player, is I try to be consistent on where I place the different types of consumables so that when you put something in the first slot, it's always X. So I always put, let's say, my repair kits in the first slot, so it's always the X button. And I may put my med kits always in the second slot, and maybe it's a rations or something else in the third slot. And I try to be consistent about this so that when I'm in a game, I don't have to look down to see where my consumables are and in which slots and which button I need to press. And it also keeps me from using the wrong one a lot of times. Now, you can't always do this because some tanks you don't run the same consumables, but if you can be fairly consistent with this across most tanks, then you'll get comfortable knowing that more than likely that X button is a repair kit, or that way. And it doesn't really matter which slot you put them in, just to be consistent about it. Let's say you put your repair kits in the second slot and it's always Y. That's okay. I'm just saying be consistent about where you put your consumables. That way you don't make that mistake in game when you're in the middle of a fight. Kind of keep going around the controller here. We're going to come to the right analog stick, or I refer to it as the right joystick. That stick is how you control the camera. This is how you look around in tanks. if you press down on this stick, it actually zooms. So you can kind of see closer to that tank. So it's kind of nice to be able to have that in your camera. And so that's why they put it on the right joystick. I'm going to keep going. We come to the next piece of the controller, which is the what I call the plus button. And there's 4 different directions you can press this plus button. There's up, down, right, and left. Well, up in the default configuration doesn't have a use. Okay, now there's still uses for this in the actual menu systems, because if you push the up button, I think in the garage, it actually takes you to your tank filters. But that's for another video. So let's talk about left and right. The left direction is the alt mode, and the right direction is the reload shell container. If you have ever seen someone shoot the remainder of their clip into a mountainside or into the ground, they're wanting to reload, and that's how they only know, that's the only way they know how to force their gun to reload. So what you want to do is be able to push that right direction on that plus button, and that will automatically reload. And what that does is it saves you ammo, which saves you silver, and it also keeps you potentially from getting spotted, because every time you shoot your gun, you're more exposed to being spotted. So try to learn about the reload button or the reload direction on the plus button. That will save you from maybe getting spotted, or certainly will save you silver. Okay, so the down direction on the plus button is the handbrake. And this is, you use the handbrake if you want to quickly change directions. So if you're a light tank, you like to use the handbrake potentially, or any fast mobile tank, you'll want to use that handbrake. So just know that in the default configuration, the handbrake is set to the down direction on the plus button. This is one of the reasons people do change their controller setup, because the handbrake on the plus button is predominantly used or pressed by your left hand. Well, the next control that we use is definitely used by your left hand. So doing both at the same time is a little harder, and really you can't. So that's why people tend to explore different controller setup configurations, because they want to be able to hit that handbrake and also move their vehicle. And that's what the left analog stick, or in my case, joystick, does. And that allows you to move your vehicle. So when you push this joystick in a particular direction, that's the direction your tank goes. And so just being able to control your tank takes a little bit of time, a little bit of finesse, but you really are not only controlling your tank with the left analog joystick, but you're also looking around with the right. So it's your 2 thumbs that you really drive in World of Tanks, and so, or you use to drive in World of Tanks. So just know that those 2 joysticks are predominantly used, and so keep that in mind when you're looking for other default configurations. Is, you know, what are the ways that you're going to keep your thumbs on those joysticks, but be able to quickly press potentially those other buttons, and what other buttons do you mostly want to press? So I'll let you play with that on your own, but hit me back on comments if you really find a configuration that you like, and you've kind of explored how to best set up your controller. The next control that we're going to come to on the joystick, on the controller, is the actual left bumper. The left bumper brings up the radial command menu, and so when you select that, you have to use the joystick to pivot around the wheel to select your particular menu option, but you have to press and hold this left bumper, and so it's a little tricky to navigate, but that is the button that actually brings up the dialogue. So if you click it and hold it, it brings it up. If you don't hold it, then it just kind of flashes and goes away. So, you know, try to play with that a little bit, get more comfortable with that, as you'll probably want to sometimes use your radial command menu for people that either don't have a mic or are not, you know, talking to their other teammates, and you want to communicate to everyone that's actually on your side and playing in your battle. Now the next piece of the control that we want to talk about is the left trigger, and that allows you to aim and zoom. The key with this is there's kind of a double zoom. If you remember, we talked about the right joystick being your camera, and you pressing on that right joystick, that allows you to zoom what I call the first time. And then if you hold down the left trigger, that allows you to zoom yet again, or the second time in. So you can even get closer or a better view of that tank, a further zoom, if you will, if you press the right joystick and hold the left trigger. And that really allows you to start moving that reticle around and placing, that shot wherever you want to make it, and really selecting, say, the lower plate of those tanks that have weaker lower plates that you want to pin. And so this combination of controls really gives you a lot of power, and you really need to play with that, because if you have trouble, like let's say you're shooting at a tank and your shells are bouncing, or you're not able to hit damage on that tank, try to learn the weak spots of tanks and really use this double zoom to really lay in where you want to shoot an enemy tank. The next control is the double window button, and what this does is it allows you to hide or show the team list as well as the big map. So when you begin a battle, you should always use this double window button to bring up the team list as well as the map, so you kind of get a sense of where you're going to go, kind of lay out your attack plan, if you will, and then also see who's on your team as well as see who's potentially on the enemy team and the types of tanks that you're facing. So this is a very helpful menu option, and you'll use it on and off as you fight in the battle HUD. That's it for the controller configuration, at least the default controller configuration. And really, what happens is when you have these different controller configurations, I'll kind of show you. When you select a different one, you can see that features move around, and they just kind of switch which buttons do what. And so, kind of play with this and kind of learn what your setup for your controller will be. That way you can get used to your controls, and you really get good at really kind of muscle memory in that you know which buttons do what on your controller. And that's the whole point, is that's how you drive a tank in World of Tanks much better, is just knowing how to control your tank. And it's not always easy. It takes some time. You have to build up muscle memory. And when you do, it's very hard to come back and change your controller configuration. So just a tip there, to play with that early, figure it out, and then get it set and kind of leave it. All right, so let's move on. We're going to move on to the second major screen, if you will, in the settings. And this is kind of the final screen that we want to cover today. It's broken down into three areas: the game options, the video options, and the audio options. The game options, there's several here that I won't really dive into. In fact, probably the first 5, maybe 6, I don't know. We won't go over too much. It's just an on and off. You can play with them and see what they do. They're almost self-explanatory, but there are some that I want to really call forth that might be useful. And so the ones that I want to call forth are the mini map settings. So here's how you can set your mini map before you go into battle. You can change it in battle through the battle HUD, but then that means if you want it to be square, every time you're going to have to change it to be square. Or you can set it to a round or circle. I don't know what the option is. I think it's circle. Round. Okay, round. When you set it in here, it's always going to come up that way as your preference when you enter the battle HUD. So this is a good way to set your type of mini map that you're going to look at, as well as you can set the location. Now you only get two options here. You get bottom right and top left. I always choose the bottom right, but you got to figure out what's best for you based on all that information that's being showed to you in the battle HUD. You may prefer it in a different place, but you only get two options, and so select the one that's best. The other option here is default server. You can there's actually three options. There's default, which picks the server that's closest to your location. But if you always want to play, or you always want to at least default to a particular server, you can come in here and set either North America or Europe. Um, and then this is one I really wanted to call out was additional efficiency indicators. This is where you can see in game in that battle HUD how much damage you've done, how much damage you've assisted with, and how much damage you've blocked. And this information is just numbers that appear in the kind of closer to the upper right corner of the screen in the battle HUD. If you don't have this set to on, those don't appear. So if people are like, well, how much damage have you done in the middle of the battle? And you say, I don't know, I can't see that. I don't know how much damage I've accumulated. Well, they probably have their additional efficiency indicators turned on, and you may not. So kind of play with this. If you want it turned on, that's great. If you don't, no problem. But this is where you turn that on, and I find it as helpful information when I'm in the middle of a battle, just to kind of keep track, especially if you're maybe working on marks or just wanting to make sure that you're doing whatever your goals are for that particular day. You want to make sure, or the additional efficiency indicators will help you keep track of that in battle. You can of course see it after battle. The next kind of area of this screen is the video. Again, kind of quickly going through these, team colors is your ability to change how your friendlies and your enemies appear as far as color. I'm a bit of an old schooler. I like the traditional red and green, but there's different options here: green, purple, and then default, I believe, is orange and blue. But that's for you to decide what team colors you want. And then colorblind mode, there is multiple options here. I'm not colorblind, so I wouldn't be able to advise here on what the settings might or should be. But come in here if you are colorblind and change this to see what works best for you. And then your gamma settings. This really kind of will dictate light and dark, and so kind of play with this as well because people like it different shades, and so you want to pick the optimum for you so that you can kind of best highlight objects that you need to see in the middle of a battle. And I usually keep gamma set at about 55%, but play with it and see what works for you. The safe zone is just the screen size. I'll let you figure that out. And that's just where the actual game window appears on your TV or monitor. You can change that size. Most people, it's defaulted to the width of the screen, so you can come in here and change that, but I wouldn't recommend making it too small. And then hide battle interface. You can turn your complete battle interface off if you don't want it on, or you can turn it on to hide it, which I don't know why you'd want to do that, but I can understand if you want to temporarily turn it off to see more of the screen, but there's lots of good information on that battle HUD, so I don't know. Play with it. Again, personal preference. The audio, the first several options, in fact, all of these options are about volume. And just know that this is audio in World of Tanks, in the game itself. And so, you can change the different volumes here to whatever your personal preference is. The one option on audio that I want to highlight is the in-game chat output. There's three options for this. It's mute all, enabled, or platooned. And what this means is, where do you want your chat from your mic going? Do you want it going to, basically everybody in the game? Well, that's enabled. That means it's going to go to anybody that you're platooned with, and it's also going to go to any team members that you have on your team that's on your side. They'll hear your output from your mic. Now, if you only want your platoon to hear your voice, then you just set it to platoon, and then the people on your team won't hear your chat that you're outputting. If you mute all, then it doesn't output anything from your mic to World of Tanks. Now, you're probably wondering, well, why would you want to set it to mute all? Well, some people use Party Chat, and Party Chat is completely separate from World of Tanks. World of Tanks has its own chat functionality. Party Chat is Microsoft functionality that is used by Microsoft to allow people to converse over their network. And so if you're using Party Chat and your mic is outputting to Party Chat, but it's also, if you've got it set to output to either platoon or enabled, then that means it's actually outputting twice if someone that you're playing with in your platoon also has, you know, or is in party chat and in the game. They will hear you talk twice, which sometimes creates an echo, which can be very annoying. So in order to prevent that echo, you can come in here and just mute all chat output to World of Tanks and only use party chat. Now the downside to party chat is, yes, you can talk to your platoon mates and the people that you're in the party chat with, but what you can't do is also talk to your other teammates. So you're foregoing the ability to talk to other teammates if you use party chat. And not that that's bad, it's just a personal preference that you should be aware of, that there are some limitations to it, and you can't converse with your entire team. So that's settings. So let me know if there's anything that you'd like me to cover in settings that I might have missed. But if you liked this video, if you found it helpful, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Put in comments any additional training or videos that you'd like me to do. I have a whole series coming up of just navigation to other concepts with World of Tanks. Yeah, just hit me up in comments and let me know what you'd like to see next. Appreciate it. You all have a good day, and I wish you success in tanking.